My name is Kelly Hartman. I begged my parents to help me during the worst moment of my life, when my daughter was hospitalized, and they replied, "We're not babysitters." They left me to choose between losing my job or abandoning my sick child, and they had the nerve to ask me for money the next day. Before I tell you how far I had to go to protect my daughter, let me ask, where are you watching this from? Type it in the comments. I'd love to know. I never expected to find myself sobbing in the fluorescent-lit corridor of Springfield General's pediatric ward, clutching my phone like it might sprout a miracle. But when your 7-year-old daughter is running a 103-degree fever and your job is dangling by a thread, even miracles start to feel like they're on backorder. I paced outside Chloe's room, watching her tiny chest rise and fall. She was hooked up to IV fluids and a heart monitor that beeped too softly for the panic in my chest. I tapped the screen of my phone again, redialing the only people I thought I could still count on, my parents. Dad picked up on the third ring. "Yes. Dad, I really need help. Chloe's still not responding to the antibiotics, and I've already missed 2 days of work. I can't afford another. Could you please just come sit with her for a few hours, just until I finish my shift?" There was a pause long enough for hope to seep in. "We're not babysitters, Kelly." The way he said it, like I'd asked for a favor I didn't deserve, cut deeper than I expected. Before I could respond, my mother's voice chimed in, tinny and indifferent on speaker. "She's old enough to stay alone, Kelly. Hospitals have nurses." I stood frozen in the corridor, my hand tightening around the phone. "She's scared. She keeps asking for me. She won't eat unless I'm here. She's not even 7 yet." But the line was already silent. They'd hung up. I stepped back into Chloe's room on shaky legs. She blinked at me, her skin pale against the pillow, lips dry, eyes dull. "Do you have to go again, Mommy?" I knelt beside her bed and tucked the blanket closer around her. "Just for a little while, baby. I'll be back by 6, I promise." She gave a weak nod, and I leaned in to kiss her forehead. It was still far too warm. I waited until I was out of her sight before I let the sob rise. Just one. Quiet, guttural. That's when it hit me, I was truly alone. I didn't have a husband to call. Derek left when Chloe was 3, citing emotional fatigue and a new job across the country. I didn't have siblings. Vanessa, my half-sister, had cut ties years ago and somehow still managed to be the family favorite. And now my parents had made it clear. I was on my own, even when my daughter's life was in limbo. I walked out of that hospital with my back straight and my heart in shreds. Outside, the wind stung my face as if to remind me, no one is coming to save you. Not them. Not anyone. Only me. What would you do if your child was hospitalized and your parents called it babysitting? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonates, because this is only the beginning of what they took from me. The next evening, I returned to the hospital with a bag of lukewarm fast food and a smile I stitched together on the drive over. It had been a brutal shift. 5 back-to-back tech support calls, a system crash, and a terse warning from my supervisor about unplanned absences. But all I cared about was seeing Chloe. I gently pushed open the hospital room door, the scent of antiseptic and microwaved soup rushing out to meet me. Chloe was curled up in her bed, facing the wall. "Hey, sweet pea," I whispered, trying to keep my voice cheerful. "I brought fries and your favorite apple slices." She didn't turn. My heart thudded. I walked closer and saw her shoulders trembling. "Chloe," I set the bag down and crouched beside her. "What's wrong?" She rolled onto her back and looked at me with eyes too big for her thin face. Her lower lip trembled. "I hate being alone, Mommy." I blinked fast, fighting the sting rising in my throat. "I know, baby, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to leave you." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "What if I don't get better?" That broke me. I wrapped my arms around her tiny body, pressing my cheek against her fevered temple. "You are getting better, I promise. You're the bravest girl I know." She clung to me like I was the last thread holding her to safety, and maybe I was. We stayed that way for a long time. Eventually, she drifted off, still gripping my fingers. I sat in the hard vinyl chair beside her bed, not moving. My phone buzzed in my purse, probably work or bills or reminders I couldn't bear to check yet. I finally pulled it out and stared at the screen. No new messages from my parents. Not even a simple "how is she?" Nothing. On impulse, I texted them again. Kelly, she was scared last night. Could you come by for an hour tomorrow while I'm at work, please? I stared at the 3 little dots blinking under the message. Then nothing. They stopped. No reply. The silence hit harder than if they'd answered with another cruel dismissal. Outside the window, night wrapped itself around the city. Inside the hospital, the light above Chloe's bed flickered softly, casting faint shadows on the wall. The hum of machines filled the air, but the room still felt achingly empty. I tried to stretch out on the built-in recliner, but it might as well have been a slab of concrete. My body ached, my mind buzzed with fear and fatigue, and still, I knew I'd have to go back to work tomorrow. Again. Alone. As I watched Chloe sleep, a strange numbness settled over me. Not the kind that protects, but the kind that warns. This is how people break. But not me. I leaned back and whispered to the ceiling, "I'll find a way, I don't care what it costs." By Wednesday morning, my reflection looked like someone I didn't recognize anymore. Skin pale, eyes rimmed red, lips cracked. I brushed my hair into a low ponytail and forced on some mascara like it could hold me together. When I finally sat down at my work computer, still chewing a granola bar I hadn't tasted, the last thing I expected was to be yanked out of my fragile focus by a family group chat notification. Dad, "Hey, Kelly, send $7,000 so Vanessa can get a car for her birthday. We found a good used Honda. She'll need it by Friday." Just like that. No, how's Chloe? No, need anything. Just money for Vanessa. I read it twice, then a third time. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. Was this a joke? A car? For Vanessa? My half-sister, the crown jewel of my parents' later-in-life glow-up, the one they bragged about endlessly. She got an A in business ethics. They once beamed over dinner, the irony completely lost on them. Meanwhile, I'd been silently rationing parking garage payments so I could afford Chloe's prescriptions. I glanced at my open banking app, my emergency fund down to nothing. A graveyard of transactions. $245 for antibiotics, $1,090 for the overnight hospital stay, $98 for pediatric imaging. I was scraping bottom. My overdraft alerts were starting to feel personal. And they wanted $7,000 for a birthday car. A laugh erupted from my chest, bitter, humorless. I typed out a response, then deleted it, typed again, deleted. Then I got an idea. With shaking hands, I opened the bank app and transferred exactly $2 to my father's account. Note, let her ride the bus. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. The backlash was immediate. "Mom, excuse me. Dad, you think this is funny?" Mom again, "You're really going to be this petty over your sister's future after everything we've done for you?" I stared at the screen, stunned. Done for me? They'd barely lifted a finger since Chloe got sick. Not a single hospital visit. Not a care package. Not even a text to ask how she was coping. All they'd done for me was judge me for not having enough, not being enough, not giving enough. Now, when I was at my weakest, they were asking me for thousands. My fingers moved faster than my thoughts, Vanessa is turning 21, not 16. She can Uber or borrow Mom's car or maybe try working. Mom, this is about family. You used to understand that. Dad, you always thought you were better than her. Now you're just proving how selfish you are. That word again. Selfish. Was it selfish to spend my last dollar on Chloe's antibiotics instead of Vanessa's birthday wheels? Was it selfish to work 12-hour shifts and sleep in vinyl chairs at a pediatric ICU? I clenched the phone so hard my knuckles went white. A few desks away, my coworker Chris peeked over our shared divider. "You okay?" I smiled too quickly. "Yeah, just family stuff." He raised an eyebrow. "You want to talk about it?" "No," I said. "That's the problem, I already tried." That night at the hospital, I brought Chloe a sketchbook, pink cover, just like I promised. Her face lit up as I handed it over. "I drew you something," she whispered. Her voice was still raspy from the illness. She flipped open the sketchbook. On the first page was a drawing, stick figure me holding her hand. We were surrounded by hearts and stars. Underneath it, she'd written in crooked letters, "Mommy is the strongest." I pressed the back of my hand to my mouth, holding in a sob, because that wasn't how I felt, not at all. I felt broken, cornered, furious and hollow all at once. I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and stood by the window long after she fell asleep. Outside, the lights of Springfield shimmered like cold stars. My phone buzzed again, a new message in the family group chat. Mom, I just don't understand what's happened to you. Me, I became a mother, that's what happened. And I muted the thread. Not because I couldn't bear it, but because I could. Finally, the hospital billing office smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet glue. I stood at the counter, rubbing a knot in my neck, trying to focus as the receptionist typed away. Her nameplate read Marcia, and she wore her glasses at the tip of her nose like a judge reviewing someone's sentence. I'm here to make the first payment, I told her, setting my ID and Chloe's patient number on the counter. Just whatever I can to hold the account. I don't have much right now. Marcia gave a small, pitying smile. Let's see what we're working with. I watched her screen flash numbers, long rows of balances and billing codes. My stomach flipped. I had a health emergency fund set aside, I added. It should cover the first few invoices. It's a joint account, but... She stopped typing, blinked, looked closer at the screen. I frowned. Is something wrong? Her voice softened. It says the account linked to your payment plan was emptied on the 10th. I felt the floor drop beneath me. That's not possible. I haven't touched it. It was authorized under a co-holder. Looks like Robert Hartman, my father. I heard myself exhale one short, stunned breath. They said it was for an urgent family need, she added gently, like that could soften the blow. My ears were ringing. Chloe's IV lines flashed through my mind. Her frail frame. The thermometer spiking past 102. Me eating ramen in a dark office while Vanessa planned a birthday spa day on social media. $7,000. The car. Are you okay, Ms. Hartman? Marcia asked, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. No, I wasn't, not even close, but I nodded anyway. Thank you, that explains everything. I walked out of the billing office in a daze. Through the glass walls, the pediatric wing looked like a snow globe, quiet, sealed, and fragile. A place where time slowed, where children fought for breath while their parents prayed over coffee cups. I checked my phone. 4 new texts from my mother. Mom, you didn't have to be cruel. Mom, you know how hard things have been for us. Mom, Vanessa needed that car for her job interviews. Mom, don't make this a war. A war? I stared at the messages and felt my jaw clench so tight it ached. My hands trembled not from fear but rage. The cold, quiet kind. I turned away from the waiting area and marched out of the hospital, into the wind, across the street, and straight into a rideshare. By the time I got to the office, I was half frozen and fully burning. I didn't stop at my cubicle. I walked directly to the glass-walled corner office. Mr. Dalton looked up from his desk, surprised. Kelly? I need 5 minutes, I said. My voice wasn't shaking. Not this time. He set down his pen. Come in. The door clicked shut behind me, muffling the office buzz. I stood there for a second, heart pounding, wondering if I was about to do something reckless or finally brave. My daughter's still in the hospital, I began. I've tried balancing everything, schedules, deadlines, overnights, and I've been swallowing every panic attack with coffee and hope. But I can't keep this going. He sat quietly, watching me, not interrupting. My parents drained the emergency fund I've been building since Chloe was born, I continued. They had access, I trusted them, and they took it without telling me. His brow furrowed. They took your medical fund, all of it for my sister's birthday car. The room was still, too still. I'll work any hours you give me, I said. Nights, weekends, holidays, I just need a way to recover. I'm not asking for pity, I'm asking for work. For a moment, Mr. Dalton just stared at me. Then he stood and walked around his desk. He didn't speak right away. He just looked at me like he saw something new. Kelly, he said finally, his voice lower now, I had no idea. I didn't want anyone to know, I replied, but I can't hide it anymore. He crossed his arms and leaned against the edge of the desk. You've been one of our most reliable team leads. Everyone sees it. And what you're doing right now for your daughter, that's not weakness. That's grit. I blinked fast. I can find extra hours for you, he said. But I can also approve a hardship advance. You don't have to dig yourself into a deeper hole just to prove something. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. And for the record, he added, no one should have to fight this hard, not alone. Something in me cracked again, but this time not from betrayal, from relief, from someone finally seeing me. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you so much. He handed me a box of tissues without a word. I took one, then 2. Mr. Dalton smiled gently. Go back to your daughter, we'll figure out the rest later. The conference room I started sleeping in wasn't technically sanctioned, but the cleaning staff knew to leave the lights off and the blinds drawn. I brought a blanket from home, rolled up a hoodie for a pillow, and made it work. By day, I ran deployments. By night, I was a ghost in my own building, exhausted, invisible, surviving. After Mr. Dalton approved the hardship advance, I threw it straight at Chloe's mounting medical bills. Every cent. No detour, no pause. The balance dropped from terrifying to merely unmanageable. But it wasn't enough. So I started volunteering for every late-night task no one wanted: crash reports, after-hours monitoring, server updates. I became the office night watch, tapping code with half-lidded eyes while vending machine soup steamed beside me. The days blurred together. I would leave the hospital around 6 a.m., drop by the apartment just long enough to shower and change, then head to the office. Sleep was a fantasy. Food, whatever was cheap and microwavable. Sometimes I'd close my eyes during software builds and jerk awake to find a new error blinking on screen. And every day, Chloe would ask, "Why do you come so late, Mommy?" I'd lie. "Just busy, baby, grown-up stuff." But one night, she looked up from her hospital bed, clutching her stuffed giraffe with both hands. Her eyes were watery, dark circles smudged beneath them. "Are you in trouble?" That stopped me cold. "What?" She sat up a little. "At work, did you do something bad?" "No," I said quickly, brushing her bangs back. "Not bad, I just have to do more than usual right now, that's all." She tilted her head. "Because we don't have help." That was the first time she ever said it like that. Like she understood we were alone. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yeah, but it's okay, I'm strong, you're strong." She nodded, but didn't look convinced. That night, I didn't even pretend to sleep. I sat in the recliner, watching her tiny chest rise and fall. Every beep from the machines felt like an accusation. I'd become the backbone and the floor all at once. If I cracked, we collapsed. At work, the whispers started. The kind people think you can't hear when you're in the hallway. "She's looking rough lately. Did you see her nod off in that meeting? Think she's using again." Using, that one hit me sideways. I hadn't touched anything harder than caffeine in years. But exhaustion looks like addiction from the outside, I guess. Even my closest colleague, Dana, pulled me aside in the break room one day. "You okay, Kelly? You haven't looked me in the eye in 2 weeks." "I'm fine," I lied. She gave me a look that said she didn't buy it but didn't push. Only one person didn't whisper. Mr. Dalton. He started checking in softly, privately, never condescending. "You're burning the candle at both ends," he said one evening, setting a fresh cup of coffee beside my keyboard, and then lighting a third one for insurance. "I'm good," I replied, cracking my neck. "Just tired." He pulled over a chair. "You've taken on more shifts than anyone else. You skipped 3 lunches, and I saw you sleeping in the conference room." I froze. "I didn't mean," I started. He held up a hand. "I'm not going to write you up, Kelly. I'm going to ask you what you actually need." I stared at him, blinking hard. "I don't know," I admitted. He nodded. "That's okay. Let's figure it out." I wanted to hug him or cry or both, but I didn't do either. I just said thank you again and went back to work. Because when your life is an unspoken emergency, gratitude becomes your armor. The next night, I spilled hot noodles on my blouse and didn't even flinch. Just mopped it up with a tissue, changed into the hoodie in my drawer, and kept going. But something was shifting. Chloe's chart showed small improvements. Her fevers weren't spiking as high. She smiled more, colored with her new pink sketchbook. The nurses even said she'd asked for Jell-O. I clung to that like a lifeline. Still, I couldn't shake the guilt. I hated not being there every moment. I hated walking out of her room with fake smiles and returning to her more tired than when I left. But I couldn't stop. If I didn't work, we wouldn't make it. There was no backup plan. And my parents, still silent, still absent. I saw a new post from Vanessa on social media, her posing next to a pastel birthday cake shaped like a Lexus. Caption, "Blessed with the best. Thanks, Mom and Dad, 2 hearts." I stared at it so long my coffee went cold. Then I screenshotted it and deleted the app. Later that night, as I dozed off over my laptop in the empty conference room, I heard the janitor humming as he passed by. The lights flickered. The air conditioner kicked on. And I whispered to no one, "Please let this all be worth it." It was raining again. The kind of steady, unbothered rain that soaked you before you noticed and matched the weight already pressing on your shoulders. I had just finished running a late client deployment, a surprise crisis from a vendor that ate up the entire evening. It was nearly midnight, and the rest of the building had emptied out long ago. I carried the physical client file, a relic some exec still insisted on using, tucked under one arm as I descended the side stairwell. I should have taken the elevator. Halfway down, my heel caught the edge of a wet step. There wasn't even time to scream. Just that sudden lurch of gravity, a flailing arm, the thud of my hip smacking the concrete. My elbow cracked against the wall. The client folder skittered across the steps, papers scattering like feathers. I lay there stunned, my breath trapped somewhere between my ribs and my throat. Pain bloomed down my side like ink in water. It took me a full minute to move. "Kelly," a voice echoed from above. I blinked upward through the fog in my eyes. Mr. Dalton. He was already rushing down the stairs, his dress shoes squeaking slightly with each step. "What happened? Are you—" He cut himself off as he knelt beside me. "I fell," I croaked. "It's fine. You're pale," he said, looking me over, and shaking. "Just tired," I tried to laugh, but it came out as a pained hiss. "Where does it hurt?" "My hip and maybe my wrist. It's okay, really." "No, it's not." He moved quickly but carefully, sliding his arm under mine to help me sit up. I winced but didn't stop him. "I'm calling a car," he said. "You're going to the ER." "I can't." He looked at me then, and his voice dropped into a tone I hadn't heard before. "Don't argue, not this time." The firmness in his voice surprised me. Not cruel, just solid, steady, like someone who wasn't going to let me bulldoze myself anymore. I didn't have the strength to fight it. He helped me up, one arm around my back as I limped slowly down the last few steps. "I'm sorry," I murmured. "This is embarrassing." "You've got nothing to be embarrassed about," he said. "You're doing 3 people's jobs, one of them is superhuman." I laughed weakly. "Superwoman's tired. Then she gets to rest." He helped me into the car, holding an umbrella over both our heads as rain sheeted sideways across the lot. Once inside, he told the driver which hospital to go to, then turned to me. "Does Chloe have a private room?" "She does. Why?" "I'll get them to put you in the next room over," he said simply. "That way you're close, no more shuttling across town." My heart cracked a little. "You don't have to." "I know," he said, "but I want to." I didn't know what to say. The pain in my side throbbed like a slow drumbeat, but it was almost easier than the sharp pang in my chest. This ache that someone cared, when I'd been walking around convinced no one did. By the time we arrived at the ER, I was limping badly, my body stiffening by the minute. Mr. Dalton helped me check in, never leaving my side. He didn't hover or ask too many questions, just waited, calm and constant. When the nurse led me into an exam room, he gently squeezed my shoulder. "I'll be right down the hall." They gave me pain meds, x-rayed my hip and wrist, and confirmed no fractures, just a deep contusion and strained ligaments. The doctor raised her eyebrows at my chart. "You're running on fumes," she said. "When's the last time you slept a full night?" I gave her a tight smile. "I don't remember." She didn't press, just wrote something on the discharge papers and handed me an ice pack. Later, when they rolled me into the room they'd arranged, right next to Chloe's, I saw Mr. Dalton standing beside her bed. He had brought her a coloring book. And a cup of Jell-O. He looked up as I entered, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "She's already halfway through this," he said. "Demanded the red flavor for the record." I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "You didn't have to stay." "I know," he said again, "but I wanted to." And there it was again. No conditions, no guilt. Just kindness. A steady hand when mine were too tired to hold anything else. That night, in the room dimmed by hospital lights, I lay in bed listening to the soft hum of machines and Chloe's gentle breathing next door. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was drowning alone. The hallway outside our rooms was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of stillness that creeps under your skin at 3 a.m., when the rest of the world has the decency to sleep, but your thoughts don't. I sat in the hospital bed next to Chloe's room, my hip throbbing, the wrist brace already itchy. The morphine had dulled the pain, but not the ache in my chest. That ache had no cure, no code, no endpoint. Across the room, Mr. Dalton had left a takeaway coffee cup on the side table and draped an extra hospital blanket across the chair beside me. He hadn't said much before slipping out, just a quiet, "Rest if you can, I'll check in tomorrow." I hadn't touched the coffee. Instead, I stared at the wall. The thin, pale blue curtain separating me from Chloe's room flapped slightly each time the HVAC kicked on. I could hear her even breaths, the occasional sniffle, the soft squeak of her favorite giraffe plush against the sheets as she rolled in her sleep. And then came the wait. It hit like it always did when the quiet finally got too loud. When there was no one to impress, no one to protect, no one to pretend for, that's when the tears came. Silent, searing. I pressed both hands over my face, curling forward, shoulders shaking as I let it break through, weeks of exhaustion, fear, rage, guilt, all of it erupting behind the curtain of solitude. I had done everything right. Every step, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every double shift, every dollar stretched until it begged for mercy. And still somehow I'd ended up here, with Chloe sick and scared, with my body bruised and broken, with my parents silent, my family indifferent, my bank account drained, and the voice in my head asking, why is it just me? Why did no one else care enough to stay, to show up, to fight? I sobbed into my hands until I couldn't tell where the pain ended and the anger began. Then I whispered, so quietly I wasn't even sure if I said it aloud. How did I become the only one fighting for her? There was no answer, just the beep of a distant machine and the sterile smell of bleach and lavender soap. Eventually, the sobs ebbed into shaky breaths. I wiped my face with the back of my sleeve and sat upright, blinking against the dull ceiling lights. A nurse peeked in gently with a tray. "Didn't mean to interrupt," she said softly. "Just bringing a warm blanket." I nodded, unable to speak. She draped it over my lap, then hesitated. "Your daughter talks about you a lot," she said. "Says you're the bravest person she knows." My throat tightened. "She told me yesterday, my mommy doesn't have magic powers, but she always shows up." That was it. That was the sentence. The one that reassembled me, shaky but whole. Because maybe it wasn't about strength. Maybe it was just about showing up when others wouldn't, when it hurt, when it cost everything. I was still here. And so was she. That was our magic. The morning light cut through the blinds in thin, quiet slats. I blinked awake slowly, the unfamiliar feeling of a warm blanket pulled up to my chest. My wrist still ached in its brace, but the pain had softened overnight into something distant. Bearable. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I heard Chloe's soft cough from the room next door and remembered everything. The hospital, the fall, the cold concrete stairwell, Mr. Dalton's steady hand. The way I broke down after midnight, raw and silent and invisible to everyone except the machines and maybe a tired nurse or two. I hadn't meant to fall apart, but I also hadn't meant to keep it together for this long. I pushed myself upright just as a nurse knocked gently and stepped in. "Morning, Ms. Hartman," she said with a practiced, kind smile. "How's the hip?" "Sore," I croaked, "but manageable." She made a note on her tablet. "You'll probably get discharged this afternoon, but there's something else I need to tell you." My breath caught. "Chloe." "Is it my daughter?" No, she said quickly. "Chloe's stable. She actually asked for waffles this morning." I laughed softly, relief washing over me. Then the nurse tilted her head. "I meant about your billing file." I stiffened. "What about it?" Her tone shifted, gentler, calmer. "All your bills were settled overnight." I blinked. "What?" "The balance is at zero. Your inpatient costs, Chloe's tests, prescriptions, your ER visit, it's all marked as paid in full." My brain stalled. "That's not possible. I didn't authorize any payments." She smiled. "Well, someone did, and they didn't leave their name, just the notation, for Kelly and Chloe. Focus on healing." The paper in my hands shook. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But I knew. Deep down, I already knew. After the nurse left, I slipped on my shoes and limped carefully next door to Chloe's room. She was sitting upright in bed, hair tousled like a bird's nest, happily eating overcooked waffles off a tray. Her face lit up when she saw me. "Mommy!" I sat beside her, brushing crumbs off her chin and tucking her blanket closer. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed you more." For a few minutes we just sat, eating waffles, holding hands, then I reached for my phone. There were 24 unread messages in the family group chat. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening it. "Mom, what is going on?" "Dad, did you freeze the joint account?" "Vanessa, OMG, are you serious? I had a deposit pending." Mom, you had no right to touch our banking access. That money was for all of us. Dad, you're tearing this family apart. There it was again. That same line. That old guilt-soaked threat, as if I had betrayed them. As if this chaos was my doing. But this time I didn't cry. This time I didn't doubt myself. I knew what I'd done. Last night, sometime between the coffee and the blanket and the breakdown, I had pulled up the banking app and revoked every shared access permission on my accounts. Closed co-signatures, reissued cards, removed names, changed passwords. I did it half-conscious, but I meant every click. I hadn't expected them to notice so fast, but maybe that's what happens when you're their piggy bank. I typed one sentence in reply, I choose Chloe, not you. Then I muted the chat, for good this time. A soft knock broke the silence. Mr. Dalton stood in the doorway, holding a paper bag in one hand and 2 cups of coffee in the other. "You're up," he said, smiling. "I heard you paid my bills," I replied. He raised an eyebrow. "Did I?" I laughed. "You're not very good at pretending." "I'm excellent at pretending," he said, walking in. "But I'm terrible at watching people I care about drown quietly." He handed me a coffee and passed Chloe a small carton of chocolate milk. Then he sat beside me, resting his arms on his knees. "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. "Maybe not," he said, "but you didn't deserve to carry it alone." There was nothing romantic in his voice, no expectation, just quiet solidarity, a man who saw someone falling and didn't look away. "They're furious," I muttered, nodding toward my phone. "I'd be more concerned if they weren't." I sipped the coffee. It was still hot, still real. "They don't get to decide your worth," he said, eyes locked on mine. "Not anymore." And in that moment, something inside me shifted, not healed, not erased, but fortified. The betrayal was still there, but so was the boundary, so was the beginning of something else. Later that afternoon, the sun poured through the hospital windows like nothing had ever gone wrong. But something had changed, something irreversible. Chloe was resting, her coloring book open beside her. Mr. Dalton had stepped out for a call, leaving behind the stillness of 2 rooms filled with more peace than I'd felt in weeks. I sat by the window with my phone in my lap. Muted or not, the family group chat had exploded. "Vanessa, are you insane? My card got declined at the boutique." "Dad, this isn't just about you and your kid. This is family money." "Mom, I gave you life. And this is how you repay us." They weren't even hiding it anymore. Not the entitlement. Not the manipulation, not the cold, sharp way they turned Chloe into a burden and Vanessa into a project worth investing in. I opened Vanessa's Instagram out of morbid curiosity. She just posted a carousel of her birthday pre-fit, photos of her trying on designer dresses in a boutique mirror, posing with duck lips and heart emojis. The caption read, "Which one screams future CEO?" Person female briefcase sparkles. One image showed a boutique clerk standing awkwardly in the background, clearly not expecting to be in the shot. Another showed Vanessa flipping her hair with the kind of smug confidence that only exists when you've never been told no. And somewhere beneath all that glitter and fabric and filtered lighting, my daughter lay in a hospital bed with a PICC line in her arm. It was surreal. It was sickening. And it was the last straw. I opened the chat just for a moment. Not to fight, just to speak clearly. My daughter needs me more. Then I turned my phone off. No mute, no lingering curiosity, just off. Across the room, Chloe stirred and looked at me. "Was that Grandma?" she asked sleepily. "No," I said gently, walking over to her bedside. "It was no one important." She nodded and curled closer into her blanket. I tucked it around her shoulders and kissed her forehead. Minutes later, Mr. Dalton returned, holding 2 soups from the cafe downstairs. "Chicken noodle and tomato," he said. "I guessed." "You guessed right," I said, accepting the container. He sat beside me again, not pressing, not asking, just being. After a while, he broke the silence. "You look different today." I looked at him, eyebrow raised. "Stronger," he clarified. "Quieter, but stronger." I smiled. "Something strange happened this morning." I realized I don't need to explain myself to people who never listened in the first place. He nodded slowly. "That's not strange, that's clarity." For a long time, we just sat and ate. No chaos, no guilt, no begging anyone to care. And even though the storm on the other end of that phone was probably still raging, it couldn't touch us in here. Not anymore. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't chasing love that ran cold. I was feeding warmth into the only place it had ever been returned. Right here, in this room, with my daughter. And someone who stayed. I should have known they wouldn't stay gone for long. Not with the money gone. Not with the controls slipping from their fingers. It was 30 minutes after lunch. Chloe had finally drifted off into a peaceful nap, her arms curled protectively around Mr. Giraffe. The pediatric wing was calm, the nurses laughing softly at the front desk. Even Mr. Dalton had stepped out to take a work call. I was enjoying the stillness. Guard down, breathing. Then the door slammed open, not knocked, slapped open. My father entered first, his gray hair damp from the drizzle outside, jaw clenched so tight I thought it might snap. My mother followed, her purse swinging from her elbow like a weapon, eyes cold and locked on me. I didn't move from my chair. Neither of them looked at Chloe. "Kelly," my father barked. "We need to talk." My stomach flipped, but I didn't flinch. I stood slowly, walked to the foot of Chloe's bed and said in a hushed voice, "She's sleeping. Keep your voice down." "She needs to hear this," my mother snapped, her voice rising anyway. "She needs to know what kind of mother you've become." My blood went cold. I stepped between them and my daughter's bed, voice low and even. "She's sick. You can either speak to me in the hallway or leave." But they didn't budge. "You think cutting us off makes you some kind of hero." My father said, "You've embarrassed this family, you've hurt your sister, I protected my child," I snapped. He blinked, caught off guard by the sharpness in my voice. "I trusted you with her future," I continued, my voice trembling. "With the little savings I'd scraped together through years of skipped meals and late nights, you used it for a birthday gift." My mother stepped forward. "Vanessa needed that car to get to her internship." "She could take the bus," I said, my tone steel. "She could walk. She could survive without a luxury for once in her life." "You've always been dramatic," she muttered, "playing the martyr, making us the villains." I looked at her, really looked. The woman who once packed my school lunches with neat little notes. The woman who now looked at my sick daughter like she was a roadblock. "Do you want to know when you tore this family apart?" I asked quietly. They didn't answer. I pointed to the IV bag above Chloe's bed. "The moment you decided that her suffering was less important than a birthday party. The moment I begged for help and you said, 'We're not babysitters.' The moment you made me choose between my dignity and your approval." Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't blink them away. "Don't stand here and pretend I broke this family," I said. "You broke it. You buried the pieces under guilt and inheritance and pretty Instagram filters." For a moment, they said nothing. Then my father stepped forward. "You think you're better than us now, don't you?" "No," I said, "but I know I'm stronger." And that's when the footsteps echoed outside the door. Mr. Dalton entered carrying 2 massive bouquets, one a mix of pink tulips and white roses for Chloe, the other bold sunflowers and lavender for me. He stopped when he saw them. He wasn't surprised. He set the bouquets on the windowsill, turned to my parents, and offered a calm, measured nod. "You've said enough," he said politely but firmly. My mother narrowed her eyes. "And who exactly are you?" "I'm someone who saw your daughter drowning and chose to throw her a rope," he said. "Financially, legally, emotionally." My father scoffed. "You think you can just insert yourself into—" "I don't think," Mr. Dalton said. "I act when it's clear no one else will." He took a step forward, voice softening. "If you're here to support Kelly and Chloe, you're welcome to stay, quietly, respectfully." A pause. "But if you're here to attack her, manipulate her, or undermine her strength, then please leave." My parents stared at him, then at me, and something shifted. They realized they had no power here anymore, no shared accounts. No secrets, no leverage, just an exit door behind them. My father's lips pressed into a hard line. My mother's jaw trembled, whether from anger or shame I couldn't tell. But they left. No final word, no apology, just silence. And a door clicking shut. I exhaled, my knees weak, but my spine steady. Mr. Dalton turned to me, gently placing a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded, then whispered, "I think I finally am." The door closed, and the silence that followed was thick enough to breathe in. For a few seconds I just stood there, hands trembling slightly, staring at the place where my parents had been. Their absence felt louder than their shouting. Louder than all the years of disappointment they'd wrapped me in like wallpaper. Mr. Dalton stayed near the door, calm as ever, the bouquets still catching the sunlight behind him. The air smelled like lavender and new beginnings. I sat down slowly, feeling the weight of it all, every sleepless night, every argument, every lonely moment stacked on my shoulders, and for once I didn't try to hold it together. I didn't have to. "Kelly," he said softly, "look at me." I did. "You don't have to explain a single thing," he continued. "They tried to strip you of your dignity when you were already standing on scraps, but they don't get to take any more from you, not now." The words hit something deep. It wasn't sympathy. It was protection, the kind I hadn't known in years, not the kind that asks, "What did you do?" but the kind that says, "You've done enough." I swallowed hard. "They'll hate me for this." "Then let them," he said. "Sometimes hate is the noise people make when they realize they can't use you anymore." That line, quiet, steady, settled in my chest like armor. Across the room, Chloe stirred and blinked up at us. "Mommy," she murmured, her voice hoarse from sleep. "Why were Grandma and Grandpa mad?" I moved to her bedside immediately, brushing the hair from her face. "Because they forgot what matters," I said. "But we're okay now, you and me." She nodded and looked at Mr. Dalton. "And him," he smiled, kneeling beside her bed. "And me if you'll let me." She grinned, a real grin, and whispered, "Okay." He winked at her, then stood, offering me one of the bouquets. "These are for you," he said. "The sunflowers reminded me of the way you walk into every storm like it's a challenge." I laughed quietly, the sound strange in my own throat after so much silence. "I don't feel much like a sunflower right now." "Maybe not," he said, "but you still found the light." For the rest of that afternoon, the world outside those hospital walls might as well have been another planet. My parents didn't exist. The bills didn't matter. The hurt still burned, yes, but it no longer owned me. Mr. Dalton handled the paperwork for my discharge, stopping only to bring Chloe a balloon shaped like a dolphin and me another cup of coffee. I watched him move through the hallways with easy confidence, and for the first time, I wondered what it would be like to have someone like that stay. Not to save me, just to stand with me. As the nurses changed Chloe's IV and checked her vitals, Mr. Dalton leaned against the wall and met my gaze. "You're both under my protection now," he said quietly. "Financially, legally, emotionally, I meant that." I wanted to argue, to insist I didn't need saving, to cling to the fierce independence I'd worn like armor for years, but the truth rose before the words could. I was tired, and maybe it wasn't weakness to finally be cared for. Maybe it was just time. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded once as if to say, "You don't need to thank me." The monitor beside Chloe beeped steadily, rhythmic and calm. For the first time in months, that sound didn't terrify me. It felt like peace. The day we were discharged, the sky was a soft, forgiving blue. No clouds, no threat of rain, just the kind of autumn air that carried a promise, cool, clean, and quietly full of newness. I held Chloe's hand as we walked down the hospital corridor, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, her steps slow but determined. Her pink hoodie hung slightly off her shoulders, and Mr. Giraffe peeked out from her backpack like a weary veteran of the pediatric ward. Mr. Dalton was waiting by the exit doors, a take-home kit tucked under one arm and his car keys in the other. He looked up and smiled when he saw us. "You two ready for escape?" he asked. Chloe grinned. "Like spies." I laughed. "More like survivors." The nurse wheeled a cart behind us with the last of our belongings stacked neatly on top. Discharge paperwork, prescription slips, my wrist brace. A bouquet now a little wilted but still lovely. When we stepped outside, the sunlight made Chloe squint. "It's too bright," she whispered. "You'll get used to it," I said, shielding her eyes with my hand. "It's what freedom looks like." That afternoon, we stopped by Angie's. Angie had been my friend since college. The kind who didn't need an explanation before offering help. She lived 2 blocks from the hospital and had turned her spare room into a haven just in case. When we pulled into her driveway, she met us at the door with open arms and a box of tissues. "You don't have to explain," she said, pulling us both into a warm hug. "Just breathe, just be." Chloe clung to her like she remembered every birthday party Angie had ever hosted. And I let myself lean into that hug a little longer than usual. Inside, the guest room was already set up, fresh sheets, a small desk, a box of crayons, and a note taped to the wall that read, "Anytime you need help, I'm here." It wasn't grand. It was better. It was safe. That evening, Angie insisted on watching Chloe so I could step out for a bit. Just breathe some fresh air, she said. Go somewhere quiet or somewhere beautiful. I almost said no. Then I remembered the Riverside Cafe. He was already there when I arrived, seated at a table under a string of soft yellow lights. The sun was setting, casting golden hues across the water. Mr. Dalton looked up, smiled, and stood. You came. I wasn't sure I would, I admitted. I was. We sat down, and for a moment the only sound was the gentle lap of water and the faint buzz of traffic over the bridge. He didn't ask questions, didn't press for reflection or revelations. He just passed me a cup of tea and waited. And that silence, it wasn't heavy, it was healing. I sipped the tea and looked out across the water. I used to think I had to prove my strength by carrying everything alone, I said softly. But maybe strength is knowing when to let someone stand beside you. He didn't say anything, just reached out and gently covered my hand with his. And that simple gesture, no grand declarations, no promises, felt like the beginning of something I hadn't dared hope for. Not a rescue, a partnership. 3 months later, the world looked different. It wasn't just the new apartment, though that helped. It had 2 bedrooms, big windows, and a creaky wooden floor that Chloe loved to slide across in socks. The rent was manageable. The walls were soft blue. And most importantly, it was ours. No more late-night coding sessions from hospital hallways. No more hiding in conference rooms or waking up to overdraft notices. No more unanswered texts to people who were supposed to care. Chloe had finished her final round of antibiotics last week. Her appetite had returned, along with the color in her cheeks and her morning sass. She even danced again, awkward, joyful twirls in the living room while I clapped along. And today was her school talent show. I sat in the front row, clutching a paper program in one hand and a small bouquet of daisies in the other. My heart was pounding, not with worry, but with something sweeter. Pride. Awe, the kind of love that makes everything else blur. Chloe stepped onto the stage wearing sparkly sneakers and a headband with silver stars. And when the spotlight hit her, she smiled, big and bright and unafraid. She sang, off-key in parts, adorably offbeat in others. But she owned that stage like she'd waited her whole life to feel that free. I clapped through tears, not bothering to hide them. Next to me, Mr. Dalton, whom Chloe now affectionately called Mr. D, handed me a tissue and whispered, "She's incredible." "She really is," I whispered back. When the final curtain fell, Chloe ran down the aisle straight into my arms, breathless and proud. "Did I do good?" she asked. I pulled her in close. "You did perfect," she giggled, leaning into my hug. And in that moment, I didn't think about the past. I didn't worry about what came next. I just held my daughter, breathing in the sweet mix of glitter hairspray and hope. "We made it," I whispered. And this time I believed it.